We generally think of cyanide as a killer rather than a creator of life. But in this distinctly Western Australian tale, be prepared for the unexpected. Bushfires can be incredibly destructive, but they can also play a positive role in the Australian landscape.
The Australian bush has a remarkable ability to cope with bushfires. Fire is one of the great regenerators that restarts ecosystems, begins the germination process, helps species to bloom. Of course, the great mystery is what is locked in bushfire smoke. That is the key agent that does this remarkable stimulation.
Professor Kingsley Dixon, together with his colleague Dr. Gavin Flamati, thought they'd solved this mystery some years ago.
Here we go. These are our beautiful little fungus.
So that won't flower unless it's had a fire?
No, we get zero. In 2004, we made the discovery that there was a master molecule locked in bushfire smoke that stimulated the germination of a whole variety of Australian species.
They named the molecule carrageenolide after a local Aboriginal word, carrick, meaning smoke.
Carrageenolide was a new compound to science. It hadn't been described before, so one of the difficulties was to prove that it was the structure we proposed, which we were able to achieve.
But not long after their discovery, and much to their surprise, Kingsley and Gavin realised that this iconic Western Australian plant, the kangaroo paw, wasn't germinating in response to carrageenolide. What was going on?
We were almost in disbelief that the master molecule didn't work with this species because it grew in a bushland environment that had a whole mixture of species that did respond to that master molecule.
So if it wasn't carrageenolide on its own that was germinating kangaroo paw seeds, how did you know that it was something else in the smoke mixture?
Because we could germinate a full range of species with smoke.
Yeah.
And with that, we get complete germination.
Oh.
Smoke is the most complex natural mixture of compounds that occurs on the planet.
So obviously not germinated yet?
No, a couple of weeks and we should start to see the first emergence coming out. Without the smoke, you won't get those species coming up at all.
Knowing that the suspect was somewhere in the smoke, the hunt returned to the lab.
And it was known that when you bubble smoke through water, you can trap the germination-active compounds in that water. Smoke contains over 4,000 different compounds, so it's a very difficult task in separating all those compounds to look for the active compound that's responsible for this effect. We get essentially a clear solution that we then test on the kangaroo paw seeds.
After 5 years of carefully sifting through the smoke, they finally discovered what makes kangaroo paw germinate after bushfires. The culprit was the compound glyceronitrile.
It turned out to be a known compound, so it was a little bit disappointing in that regard, but it turned out to be quite fascinating the way, it can release cyanide, and that cyanide was the true active stimulant in this case.
Cyanide's been known to germinate a range of species all the way from sunflowers to apple seeds, but it's only ever been shown in laboratory situations to have that role. It's a first for science that we've discovered that there is a natural ecological source for cyanide. The molecule that's produced from bushfire smoke percolates through the soil, enters the seed with that first flush of winter rainfall, and then the cyanide is released inside the seed, and it's then that the cyanide does its work. The discovery of cyanide really has just opened our eyes that Australia is the continent of discovery. Every story that we start unravelling here becomes essentially a new book on the way that plants have adapted to live on the planet.
So Kingsley's work continues. But in the meantime, it's good to know that cyanide is useful for something other than removing an inconvenient relative.